And new details tonight on what's missing from the Epstein files, specifically interviews with a woman who claims she was assaulted by both Jeffrey Epstein and President Trump.
This says several major figures are taking responsibility for their relationships with Epstein. NBC's Hallie Jackson has those developments for us now.
The spotlight tonight on what's not in the millions of Epstein files released by the DOJ. Summaries and notes from 3 separate interviews the FBI conducted with a Jeffrey Epstein accuser who also made sex abuse allegations against President Trump in 2019. Materials withheld, according to an NBC News analysis, and information provided by a source familiar with the Epstein investigation.
The evidence is pointing to these documents are missing. It's a survivor who has made serious allegations of the president, and that needs to be investigated.
The Justice Department has said it produced all responsive documents, adding tonight it's reviewing files, and if any were improperly withheld, the department will publish it consistent with the law.
That is how tonight's story begins. Missing documents, redacted interview summaries, and new scrutiny over what was left out of the Justice Department's massive release tied to Jeffrey Epstein. The DOJ says it released everything responsive, but new reporting suggests certain FBI memos connected to allegations involving Donald Trump were not included in the public files. If true, that raises immediate questions. Questions about transparency, questions about process, questions about whether the full picture has been shown to the American public. And just as those concerns were building, a dramatic new development made this story even more explosive. Because Epstein's longtime associate, Ghislaine Maxwell, stepped directly into the center of the political storm.
Tonight, newly released videos showing Jeffrey Epstein's only convicted co-conspirator, Ghislaine Maxwell, appearing before lawmakers from a Texas prison, refusing to answer questions unless President Trump grants her clemency first.
I invoke my Fifth Amendment right to silence.
Maxwell, who is currently challenging her conviction and 20-year sentence for trafficking minors to Epstein, pleading the Fifth. Her lawyer stating she is prepared to speak fully and honestly if granted clemency by President Trump, adding both President Trump and President Clinton are innocent of any wrongdoing. Ms. Maxwell alone can explain why. President Trump, who was friends with Epstein for more than 2 decades, has not ruled out a pardon for Maxwell. Today, the House Oversight Committee's top Republican warning against it.
She's asked for clemency from the president, so I personally don't think she should be granted any type of immunity or clemency.
Democrats arguing Maxwell is playing Trump.
This was an effort to essentially try to secure her pardon by keeping her mouth shut.
The fallout from the more than 3 million pages of Epstein files released by the Justice Department late last month still growing.
Maxwell appeared before lawmakers. She was expected to answer questions about her role in Epstein's trafficking operation. Instead, she invoked the Fifth Amendment, silence. But through her attorney, she delivered a powerful message. She is willing to testify. She is willing to cooperate. She is willing to answer questions. Under one condition, clemency from the president. That single condition transforms the political landscape because the presidential pardon power is real. It is constitutional. But when testimony is discussed alongside clemency, the optics alone create tension, even if no agreement exists, even if no deal is made. The perception of a possible exchange becomes politically combustible. Now Congress is watching closely. Both parties understand how sensitive this moment is. Grant clemency, and critics will argue it looks self-serving. Refuse clemency, and Maxwell remains legally exposed, potentially holding information that could fuel further scrutiny. This is not just legal, it is strategic, it is political, and it is unfolding in real time.
House Oversight Committee have launched an investigation following reports the Justice Department withheld some Epstein files related to allegations President Trump sexually abused a minor. The New York Times is reporting the FBI memos removed from public view were summaries of interviews about claims made by a woman that she had been sexually and physically assaulted by President Trump decades earlier when she was 13. The woman came forward in 2019 after Epstein's arrest. President Trump has denied wrongdoing in connection with Jeffrey Epstein. Former President Bill Clinton and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton scheduled to testify tomorrow and Friday as part of the House Oversight Committee's Epstein investigation. The Clintons' closed-door depositions will be held in New York. They have not been accused of any wrongdoing by survivors of Epstein's abuse.
Now let's widen the lens. According to reporting from the New York Times, some FBI summaries involving allegations tied to Trump were removed from public view before the Epstein file release. The Justice Department says it is reviewing whether any material was improperly withheld. That review is critical because credibility is at stake. If documents were lawfully withheld for privacy or procedural reasons, the DOJ will need to clearly explain that. If material was removed improperly, that opens an entirely new line of inquiry, and Congress is already expanding oversight. Former President Bill Clinton is scheduled for deposition. Former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton will also testify. Neither has been accused of wrongdoing by survivors. But the fact that multiple former presidents are connected in any way to the broader Epstein orbit ensures this investigation remains headline news. Now consider Maxwell's position carefully. She is serving a 20-year federal sentence. Her appeals are ongoing. Her legal exposure is significant. If she testifies without clemency, she risks further complications. If she receives clemency, critics will question her credibility instantly. Either path carries consequences. For Trump, the decision is equally delicate. Grant clemency and face accusations of impropriety or conflict of interest. Refuse clemency and risk the possibility that Maxwell cooperates in ways that create new political turbulence. Say nothing and allow speculation to dominate the news cycle. There is no simple outcome here. This moment touches on executive power, congressional authority, Department of Justice transparency, and the balance between legal rights and public accountability. The Constitution grants presidents sweeping pardon authority, but history shows that controversial pardons often carry lasting political cost, even when legally sound, and that is why perception matters as much as legality. The midterm elections are approaching, approval ratings are sensitive, sustained investigations tend to shape voter opinion. Campaign messaging will inevitably reference withheld documents, redacted files, and clemency discussions. Even if no charges are filed, even if no agreement is made, the narrative itself influences political momentum. Another key factor is institutional trust. The American public expects transparency in high-profile investigations. When documents appear missing, suspicion grows. When a convicted associate offers conditional cooperation, the tension escalates. When congressional hearings expand, the story deepens. And once a story like this reaches critical mass, it rarely fades quickly. Lawmakers now have authority to subpoena communications. They can request internal DOJ correspondence. They can examine whether any contact occurred regarding potential clemency discussions. Each step extends the timeline. Each hearing generates new headlines. And every new headline reinforces public focus. At the center of all of this are three major questions. Were any documents improperly withheld? Will Maxwell ultimately testify? And how will presidential power be exercised, if at all? Those answers will shape the next chapter. For now, depositions are scheduled. Reviews are underway. Political pressure is intensifying, and both parties understand the stakes. This investigation is no longer just about past associations. It is about present accountability. It is about constitutional authority. It is about whether transparency prevails when power and politics intersect. As more details emerge, the consequences could stretch far beyond this moment. Because once questions about withheld evidence and executive power enter the public arena, they tend to linger. We are watching a story that could redefine the political landscape heading into the next election cycle. And until the DOJ review concludes, until congressional testimony unfolds, and until decisions about clemency are clarified, this issue will remain at the forefront of national debate. We will continue monitoring every development, because the next move in this unfolding situation could change everything.